Catch and Release by My Lost and Found. Read by My Lost and Found. Summary. Kidnapping is an everyday reality for some people, a footnote in their day, really. But during those kidnappings, sometimes it's the people you meet that really stick with you. Various kidnapping stories from the perspective of people around our main duo. This is the 6th part in a series. Specifically, a series of not-so-unfortunate kidnappings. As always, link to the fic is in the description below, and on with the story. Chapter 1. Shigaraki's Day Out. Summary. Kids are like plants. They need food, water, and sun, and one Shigaraki Tomura is not getting enough of one of those, in his caretaker's opinion. Solution? Chuck the 11-year-old out on his own. I'm sure it'll be fine. The echo of metal skidding across the rough alley ground bounced off the narrow brick walls. Tomura scowled as he kicked the rusty can again, shoving his hands into his pockets. This was stupid. He should be back in his room finding the perfect skin for his latest Hollow Knight replay, not walking around. He shuddered. Outside. So Kurogiri thought he needed sunlight. That was dumb. Now that he thought about it, Tomura couldn't remember the last time he was outside during the day. But, well, he lasted that long without sun, so he didn't need it. And given he didn't need it, there was no reason he should be forced outside on his own. When he goes outside, he's either with Sensei or the Misty Butler himself. This was the first time he could remember being outside on his own. He hated it. Stupid Kurogiri, he muttered, as his red high tops came into contact with the empty can once again. Stupid sunlight. By his best guess, it'd been an hour since he was dropped off on a random street in the city. He scowled at the thought. He would know how long he'd been out here wandering alleys and back streets if someone had let him grab his phone before dropping him through a portal. Tomura was practically fuming, mind a tumbling ocean of, how dare he? He was so caught up in his own thoughts, he didn't notice the woman who had been following him for the last 10 minutes slink out of the shadows. Nor did he notice a van pull up, blocking the exit of the alley, until there was a sharp prick in the back of his neck, turning his thoughts to mush and letting him fall limply into waiting arms. So, yeah. Safe to say, when Tomura woke up on a dingy carpet floor, he was not in a good mood. Thoughts dripped in the back of his mind, coming together to make him whole again, slowly but surely. The old, prickling quality of the tan carpet, the hum of air conditioning flowing through the vents, the sluggishness clinging to his bones, and most apparent, the annoyance of an 11-year-old in full force. Sitting up with a groan, he leaned back against peeling wallpaper, eyeing the sturdy-looking door. He could decay it in seconds if he wanted to, but his mind was still coalescing back together sluggishly. He didn't really feel like getting up, let alone going back outside to wander streets in the gross sunlight. This was all Kurogiri's fault anyway. It was only right the Misty Butler come get him from wherever he'd ended up. And he'd have to, sooner or later, if he didn't want to get in trouble with Sensei. So Tomura settled in, glaring at the door, and waited. And waited and waited and... Kurogiri was taking so long. Tomura had half a mind to just decay his way out right here and now, but he had made a decision, and he was sticking to it. Just as he strengthened his resolve, the door opened, streaming in more light than the old, half-broken bulb in the ceiling could hope to produce. Through the door, a small purple-haired child was shoved, falling to the ground with a muffled keen. Tomura was stunned still at the crumpled child sprawled out before him, and that was before a second child, green mop of hair curling around their head, was thrown in after, narrowly avoiding falling on top of the first. The door was slammed shut as the broccoli-haired child cried out in pain, knees and elbows catching his fall roughly on the carpeted floor. Tomura sat there for a moment, something he couldn't name winding in his chest at the sight of the kids before him. Broccoli's green eyes locked on to the cotton candy-haired child as soon as budding tears had been brushed from his eyes, shuffling over to the still prone boy. Cotton Candy let out another distressed whine, and that definitely didn't sound right. It was muffled yet echoed slightly, in a way the small storage room wouldn't be able to facilitate. Freckled hands cupped pale cheeks, tilting Cotton Candy's face up until Tomura could see the muzzle. Oh, hell no. Screw waiting for Kurogiri. Tomura was getting these little kids out of wherever here was. Right now, and anyone who got in his way would be nothing more than a pile of dust on the ground. Hey, it's okay, Toshi, Broccoli stuttered out. Oh, get us out of here. It didn't seem like the vegetable-haired child had noticed him yet. All his attention centered in on the purple kid and calming him down. And he was doing quite a good job at that, the kid's breathing evening out as much as it could from behind the muzzle. As purple eyes cleared, they drifted from freckled face in front of them, towards Tomura, still curled up by the wall. Eyes widening, Cotton Candy sat up fully, looking at Tomura with a wary gaze. What are you? Broccoli froze when he finally noticed Tomura, hands slipping into the other boy's grasp. Hey, Tomura said awkwardly, not really knowing how to talk to kids. I'm not gonna hurt you. Do you want to get out of here? The two kids exchanged glances, before the green one nodded for them both. Yes? Are you gonna help us? Tomura shifted out of his relaxed position against the wall. I am. You don't have to worry anymore. Resolve hardened in watery green eyes, jolting his head stiffly in a nod. Okay, but first, I have to get this off Toshi. Tomura wasn't sure what the kid was getting at when he slipped off a familiar red shoe, until he saw the glint of silver. Smart place to hide a knife. The kid flipped open the blade with a somewhat practiced ease, bringing it over to Cotton Candy's face. The straps of the muzzle dug tightly into pale skin, leaving little room to squeeze a blade without risking drawing blood. Little room trembling hands were not likely to find with how much they were shaking. Before anything could go wrong, Tomura leaned forward, snatching the knife out of his hands. Let me. My hands are steadier than yours. And sure, he could use his quirk to get the wretched thing off Cotton Candy's face, but he didn't want to risk decay spreading further than he intended. With confidence born from growing up in Japan's criminal underbelly, Tomura sliced the blade against thick straps, causing them to fall away. Cotton Candy took a deep, shuddering breath as the mask thudded on dull carpet. Thanks, he breathed, rubbing his cheeks. No problem, Tomura replied, suppressing his flush at the praise. Just follow me. I'll get us out. How? Broccoli asked, following Tomura to the door. I'm not very good at picking locks yet. Smirking, Tomura reached a hand towards the door. Who said anything about picking locks? Cracks of decay spiderwebbed out from his hand, crumpling away in patches of dust. Soon, the door was nothing more than a pile at their feet. But, what? Broccoli sputtered. Your shoes. A tall man with black scales decorating his cheeks stuck his head in front of the doorway and looked down at the dust that was the door in shock. Tomura was startled at running into someone so fast, reaching out a hand to give him the same treatment as the door after only a second's hesitation. But before he could move far, a knife flew past him and embedded itself in the man's shoulder. Tomura looked back as the scaled man cried out in pain, to see Cotton Candy, with his arm outstretched, pocket knife no longer where Tomura had abandoned it on the floor. Let's go! Broccoli yelled, small hand encircling Tomura's wrist and twining in Cotton Candy's hand before tugging them forward down the hall, away from the man crying like a baby. Weak sauce, Tomura muttered. That wasn't even a splinter. Focusing back on the escape, he saw an intersection up ahead, one path branching right and the other left. Which way do we go? Cotton Candy asked nervously as they drew closer. Straight, Tomura declared, free hand reaching out in front just as they arrived at the wall. It doesn't take long for a patch large enough for them to go through to crumble. This time, it's Tomura tugging them forward. They continue like that, in a straight line. The few times they broke through a wall and saw people, they were too shocked to react before the group had squeezed themselves through another hole in the wall. Before long, the next crumbling wall led way to an empty back alley and warm sunlight shining down on them. Gross. All for One was having a lovely day. It hadn't started out that way. The sound of a screeching child waking him from his slumber. All for One knows that he needs to foster an unbridled rage and hatred in his successor, but video games might have been a step too far. Introducing him to Roblox had certainly been. He'd had to wipe the game's existence from the boy's mind to stop the feral growling whenever he was dragged away to do something like eat. That had not been a pleasant way to start off his day, and the ancient supervillain had not expected much of it. Until that was, Kurogiri approached him with the request that he may be allowed to take the boy outside to get some sunlight. At first, he was going to brush off the ridiculous idea. Sunlight? Why would he need that? But then, he'd had an idea of his own. The world was a cruel place, especially for a young kid wandering the streets alone. All for One had grown up with that knowledge bored into his bones. His white hair had been a clear indicator that he was quirked, and Tomura's red shoes were a clear indicator that he was not. Well, he wasn't supposed to have a quirk. It wasn't like All for One changed someone's anatomy when a quirk like decay was transferred in. Yes, what a brilliant idea it had been. Send the boy out with a bright red target just waiting for kidnappers or hate crime activists. And just when the world had once again crushed the young boy, All for One would swoop in to save him. It hadn't taken long for him to be kidnapped, and by such a prolific group at that. These professionals bounced around Japan, disabling any quirks before they even made it through the doors of whatever temporary base they had commandeered, allowing their skilled members to focus on capture, and whoever else they had left behind to guard the captives. He let the boy stew for a few hours before he rescued him, to let the boy's anger properly fester. Nothing could go wrong with this plan. Air distorted and tugged the moment before Kurogiri warped into the room. Master, it would appear as though young Tomura has escaped. What? All for One did not splutter. How? Kurogiri's black mist wavered. I am unsure, Master, though he keeps mentioning broccoli and cotton candy. And that's all for this chapter of the fic. And yes, this is a new part to my series of not-so-unfortunate kidnappings series. It's, just another, section, and I made another section because I got a lovely prompt from Glitterbug on a comment in one of my podfics that was just like, what if Tomura was kidnapped with, Izuku and Hitoshi? And I was like, yes, I'm doing that right now. I remember writing down the idea, and it was way too late and took way too long, but I love the idea, and I love how this chapter turned out. The hate for sunlight goes strong with this one. It just happened. But no, yeah, this is Tomura's 11, and I wrote down, I think the boys are 6 in this chapter, so it's long enough ago that they don't remember Shigaraki in current times. At least maybe they'll remember with a trigger, but at least at this time they don't remember. And Shigaraki is just like, ah yes, a piece of cotton candy, a piece of broccoli. They're tiny children. Tiny children don't often look, the same when they're quite a few years older. Something about growing and all that. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy that. I'm actually recording this very soon after writing it. I think I posted the chapter today, but I wrote it yesterday. I always like to sleep on things before I actually post a chapter. I don't know, who knows what snuck in there during sleep deprivation. Not me, until the next morning, that is. But yes. Not sure when the next chapter I'm going to write is going to be happening, but, it'll happen eventually. They're coming out slowly, but surely. But, yes. That's all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.